All right. Hey guys, welcome. It is Wednesday night. Back with your live housing real estate market update, answering your questions live here. Josh will be joining us in just a minute. There he is. Handsome fella with his new camera, looking all good over there. Has no idea what I'm saying because he's looking down, doesn't have anything plugged in.
Bro, you went and started without me. I mean, I can't believe that. My
up.
feelings are hurt. It's 5 p.m. I am right on time.
He showed up. So thank you guys for joining us. As always, love to know where you're watching from. See a lot of familiar names in the chat already. Thank you guys for joining us and all the support. We definitely appreciate it. Already got a couple questions coming in, and encourage you guys, if you have questions, let's put them in there. Let's get to them and start this off strong and start answering some questions. We'll have Josh update us on interest rates in a bit. Just kind of give us an idea of where things have gone. I think it's kind of peaked a little bit, but he's got his the bosses in.
The brains of the operation is here and ready to answer questions. So
look at that.
Ask away.
There you go. The smartest one in the room right there.
Smartest one in the room by a lot, by a 3-to-1 margin.
Absolutely. So, and when you're, Michael, see you're in Texas, let us know where you're watching from. Again, would love to know on the housing market. If you're in the housing market, what is going on? If you're sitting on the sidelines, maybe why you're sitting on the sidelines. What's the reasoning for hanging out? Is it interest rates? Is it housing prices? Is it something else? But let's dive into it. So, earlier in the week, I talked a little bit about some frustrations with buyers that I'm working with, and not my buyers per se, but just the market in general, things that are going on in our housing market here locally. And it seems to be the consensus along a lot of markets out there. And how I know that is I'm talking to real estate agents, because I'm experiencing it here. And as many of you guys know, I'm networking with agents all across the country all the time. And I'm calling them just to say, hey, what's going on in your market? Are you guys experiencing similar things that we are here? Just so we can kind of get a feel and make sure our market, what we're experiencing isn't alone. And we're not alone in this. And everyone is essentially the same. Multiple offers, bidding way above the asking price, just getting crazy out there. So we'll talk about some things that I'm seeing in the market. It's really hard. I told you the other day, I used to be able to tell you how to stand out in the market, right? As a real estate agent, as a professional, I used to be able to give you really good advice and say, hey, this is where I think it's going to sell. This is what we should do in this market. That's all out the window. I mean, it's really sad. I mean, I talk to Josh all the time. It's frustrating because, you want to do the best for your clients and you try to do the best for your clients and you're making no ground in the process. And, but Josh, anything you want to add to that before we start jumping in these questions here?
Well, the thing that I was going to add is you have to laugh to keep from crying. So we're professionals. So don't feel bad for us. But we start every morning by just going over the newest round of craziness of things that don't make sense. And kind of what we were talking about last night. I pride myself on having all of the data sources, doing the research, and logically knowing where are we at and what comes next. Market's pretty illogical right now. Not illogical in the sense that it doesn't make sense for prices to be higher and having multiple bids on properties. Just the level of this, the best numbers or the things that I have that make this make sense. I'll pull up the chart. I'll get the chart and I'll have it for next week. But they were showing, we've talked about why is the market going to be strong? Why are home prices going to do well? The median age of a first-time home buyer is 33. 33-year-olds, the middle of the millennial generation. They're right coming to of that age. And the next 3 years, there's more and more of them. So that's piece number one. It's a large generation coming into prime home buying age. Second piece of that is that we've underbuilt since before the downturn, but really especially after the downturn in 2008. So we've got 13, 14 years here of not creating enough supply. So for us here in Orange and LA County, there's not a lot of new home inventory. Even 15 years ago, there wasn't. We primarily built out. But in newer areas that can take some of the pressure off when there are newer homes, lower priced homes, it just hasn't kept pace. And even in areas like for us, we see a lot of people go out to Phoenix the Phoenix Metro. And after their sort of meltdown out there, builders really slowed down for a number of years. So they have land and they're building aggressively out there. But there's problems and issues with that. So I want to grab that chart and show it to you guys next week, because beyond that, I think that's much more important than thinking in terms of low interest rates, pushing prices higher. It's just we have far too many people pursuing too few homes, and yeah, it's as little fun for Jeb and I as it is for you guys. And the other, talking about little fun, last week we had 805s, and now we're limited to LaCroix, so it's not nearly as fun this week.
Too funny. There might still be some around in case that's the direction you want to go. So anyway. So going to dive into some questions here. And as Josh mentioned, we talk about the craziness every day. I swear every day I come home and I tell my wife a new story and I say, you're not going to believe this. And she's like, what? And then I tell her and I'm baffled. Like at this point, I shouldn't be baffled any longer, just because I feel like I can't top the last story. But every time I do, because somebody is willing to do something crazier than the last guy. And it's not just one person. These are multiple people doing this. I mean, the example the other day was 12 people bid higher than we did, and we were $100,000 over the asking price. So there were 12 people that were, crazier in that environment. And the reality is, Josh, is what it's really, the thing that you have to consider is you don't really know why people buy, right? You think people want to buy because they have a roof over their head or maybe a growing family or what have you, but there's other things that drive prices too. You never know if somebody, maybe their mom lives next door, or there's some factor like that, or maybe it's a 1031 tax exchange. Somebody has to buy a property, otherwise they get taxed, and they're willing to do things to get into property immediately. So you don't have those. And so that to me would be a rational reason. But then when you get 12 people doing that sort of thing on one property, that is hard to comprehend. It takes the logic out of it, and being a logical thinker most of the time, not an emotional thinker, it drives me bananas. But anyway,
and think about that for a sec, Jeb. When you get outbid by one or two people, you're like, those crazy people over there overbidding even above what we were offering. And when there's 12 of them, you go, do those 12 people know something that everyone else doesn't? It's crazy.
Well, that's what's, the last thing I'll say on this before we dive into questions is, honestly, I think prices are going to continue up for some period of time. So the person that bought that at whatever it was, over 800, chances are the next person is going to buy something that's going to make that look like, hey, those people knew what they were doing. And that is, I think, the toughest part for me is you used to be able to consistently say, in a good market this year, we're going to be 5 to 7% appreciation, like on a really good year. And now that would be an awful year compared to the last 3. I mean, it would be welcoming. I would love to see it, because it would mean things are kind of mitigating a little bit into where we're not getting into this crazy territory. But, 5%, if it only appreciated 5% this year, people would look at it and go, what's wrong with the housing market? I mean, it went up 15% last year. I mean, so when, $100,000 over a $700,000 list price is 14%. And so if somebody paid another 20, 30, 40 grand over that, you're talking 17, 18% here. I mean, this is, it's getting into uncharted territory to some extent. But we got some questions here, so we're going to dive into them. Joe finally got a home, so congratulations, Joe. Multiple bids, been doing it for a little bit. Actually 22 bids on a property and got his offer accepted, so congrats. And there's a lot of people out there in similar situations, and some people are calling it quits, other people are sticking to it, and some people are, getting to the finish line. So, congrats to you, my friend. Ishmael is a first-time home buyer asking what they can do to help their offer stand out in this market, if that's even possible. What I'm coming to find, and I'm going to talk about this in a video.
You can absolutely do it, and you can stand out. The question is, does it matter?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is what I've come to find out, and I'm going to talk about this in a video later this week, is when writing an offer, price is usually the number one factor for most people. For most sellers, they're looking at price first. Then they're looking at down payment, terms of the contract, contingency periods, all that stuff. What I'm, starting to believe more so than anything else is that it's price for sure, and then it's down payment and price are the most important factors for a lot of sellers. And they see a higher down payment, just like sometimes sellers see a higher cash or a cash offer versus a down payment, an offer that's financed rather, and they automatically assume the cash offer is better just because they have a larger down payment. And so what I'm seeing right now is sellers, regardless of two offers being similar, they're looking at price, but then they're looking at the down payment. So the down payment for sellers right now I think is probably close to the most important thing in a lot of these offers, because they feel like there could be appraisal issues. They feel like, the market could go sideways. These people with the cash could potentially still close if something goes wrong, right? They have the cash necessary that if it came in less, even though they waived their appraisal contingency, if something happened, they have the money to do it. Whereas me as a listing agent, I don't necessarily approach offers like that. I take a different approach. I look at the full picture. I'm not scared of loans that are 5% down or 10% down. It's all about knowing how those offers work, having that conversation with the lender on the other side to make sure those people are truly qualified, that that they have reserves and maybe additional money in some cases to make deals work. And then if one offer is higher than the other, you explain that to your seller and you help them understand. Sellers get scared because they want the offer, they want the deal to close. But what they don't understand is if a deal did fall apart, hypothetically speaking, there's still 20 other people in some cases that want that property. So you're still going to get your price, right? In some cases, seller's up against the time clock and other things, and I get that. And they want to confirm, that they have a solid deal. And so those are tough things to approach. And that's why it's always good to have that conversation to find out what the seller's looking for. If the agent will actually have a conversation with you in this market, if they actually pick up their phone and return text and return emails, because a lot of them aren't doing that at the moment. So, it's hard. It's hard to stand out in this market because you have a lot of competition. I would say, you've got to put your best foot forward in every single situation, and you have to approach it as if you're not going to get a counteroffer. You used to always be able to count on writing an offer and almost guaranteeing that you were going to get a counteroffer if there were multiple offers. Now, not the case. This past weekend, wrote 5 offers. 3 of them, not a counter at all. Didn't even get a response. Just
one of them, you got an email that they already accepted an offer basically before they got the offer, and the agent apologized. Hey, I'm sorry, the seller's got an offer they couldn't refuse, and they're not even looking at anyone else's offers.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the thing is you just don't know what somebody's going to do out there, and it's tough. It's don't expect to write an offer. Everybody wants to negotiate. Everybody's like, I don't want to put my best foot forward because what if I'm overpaying up front and I don't want to overpay and I just want to see what they come back with and ask. That's one approach, probably not the right approach in this market, depending on where you're located. So you have to approach it as if you're not going to hear back. And maybe you do hear back and, they ask for your highest and best at that point. Well, you could still come back with the same offer. You don't have to necessarily raise your offer in that case. You could come back with the exact same thing, but at least you're at bat and you're not still in the dugout, which is where I've been in the last 5 that I've written. 1, we actually are still in counteroffer stages, so there might be a chance in hell that we'll get it, but we'll see. It's hard to say. So anything you want to add to that, Josh, and standing out?
Yeah, actually, a couple things. So the biggest thing is do everything you can to stand out, but know that just like Jeb said, a lot of times it's not going to matter. I work with a lot of agents. I like to think all of the agents that I work with are pretty professional. I'm not saying this just because it's Jeb's show and it's Jeb's channel here, but Jeb goes above and beyond in writing a very detailed cover email with your offer, above and beyond in terms of reaching out with a phone call. Most of them don't answer, but Jeb's going to leave a detailed voice message. He's going to follow up with a text. So you need to make sure that your agent, you don't want an inexperienced agent, you don't want a lazy agent, you don't want an unprofessional agent, you don't want an agent that doesn't communicate well either in writing or over verbal communications. So there's that piece. We do the same thing. Jeb copies me on every offer that goes out. We reach out with a phone call. They're probably not going to answer. We reach out with a bomb video, which is simply a video that we can embed into an email. We had one this week where the selling agent said, "Hey, we really like that video. I did show it to your sellers, but we had
didn't get the offer accepted, but they liked your video."
They loved the video. It was very entertaining
awesome.
to them.
What a joke.
Yeah. So like I'm saying, there's a lot of things you can do, your lender can do, your realtor can do, and everyone should do all of those things. Because what Michael was the first one that popped up here and said, "Hey, I finally got one under contract. We were one of 22 offers." He probably missed out on 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 of those beforehand. You don't know which is the one that you're going to win, and you don't know why. I guess sort of the last thing I'd love to add on this topic is, my aunt is selling, they have 2 homes, they snowbirds. So they're just getting to a point where they don't feel they can do the snowbird anymore. So they're living in frozen land from now on. So they listed the house, got an offer the first afternoon it went on the market, had 13 showings the next day, got 5 or 6 more offers. And one of them was the highest offer. It was a cash offer. And that was what they thought they wanted to do. Hey, it nets us the most money and it's cash. We can close in 3 weeks and be done. And as they started talking about it, they actually went to one of their neighbors' houses while the 13 showings were happening on Sunday. And they were sitting there going, "You know what? We don't think that these people are really the best fit for our neighborhood and for our neighbors." So as they thought through it, they said, "You know what? We're at a point in life that the last top dollar isn't going to make a difference in our lives. We want to leave our friends and neighbors here with someone that's going to enjoy the home." So they felt much better about the offer they accepted in terms of who was going to be in the home and how that person was going to react to the neighborhood. So much like Jeb said, you never know what's going to be the thing that tilts it in your favor or against you. So put your best foot forward, put your personality into it, let the people know why you're going to be good for their friends and neighbors that they're leaving behind, why you're going to love the home that they probably have an attachment to, but some people just don't. You don't know. Just continually put your best foot forward and just trust that what's meant to be will always find a way.
Oh, there you go. Good stuff. I'm still waiting on that shirt.
I still don't have my damn t-shirt.
Tyler made it. So Tyler, welcome. Michael asked a good question here. I don't want to get into interest rates quite yet, but he asked a question about buying new construction versus existing homes. Is there going to be a difference in the rate when you're buying new construction versus existing?
No. The lenders do not care between new or existing. So from that perspective, you don't have anything to worry about. Really looking at things like credit scores, loan to value, loan type is what's going to impact your interest rate. But whether it's new construction or existing, they don't discriminate between the two.
All right. Tyler's asking a question about the housing market decreasing over time. He's a buyer this year, wondering about being nervous about potentially buying at the height is what I'm getting out of that question. I would ask a couple things, Tyler. Real estate's all about location. It's all about, it's all about location really more than anything else, but and time frame, right? I mean, real estate over time will always do well. It's one of those assets that you can call it an asset or not, depending on how you want to frame it, but it's one of those things over time that will likely continue to appreciate. So if your time horizon is longer than 5 years, the longer it is, I think the better off you'll be. And that's not because I think home prices are going to go down in a year or 2 years or that matter. It's really hard to say what's going to happen in a year from now. I mean, right now, the fundamentals of the market, supply, demand, it looks as if we could have another year or two of what is going on right now, assuming nothing changes with interest rates. Not a lot can really change with supply in that time frame, in my opinion, to slow the housing market enough for prices to really depreciate. I think if anything, maybe you'd see some leveling off, but even then, I don't know that that's going to happen. So I would tell you, think about location, where you're buying. Think about, growth around you, jobs, that sort of thing, businesses coming to the area, being in the property long-term. Those are all factors that play into how real estate plays out at the end of the day. Here in Southern California, where I'm located, not a lot of places to build. We're by the ocean. The weather's great. It's always going to be desirable. Now there are things about it that aren't great, and that's not necessarily due to the area. That's due to the state as a whole. But you know what? I'm not here for that. I'm here for other reasons. And so for that, I'm not worried about any real estate locally long term, because I know it's going to do well. But that would, again, I would say think about where you're buying, and then have that longer time horizon. What's your thoughts on that, Josh?
Um, I really, really, really wish I had the chart that we were talking about, just showing the size of the millennial generation and the lack of supply of new homes, just lack of supply of housing nationwide. We are entering an era, the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years of a chronic undersupply of homes being available. It doesn't mean that they will continue going up, but anytime you have limited supply and fairly strong demand, we're going to be looking at increasing prices. The other chart that I would love to show you guys is real home prices. We're all aware that we're going like this in home prices, seeing every sale going 10, 20, 30, 50, $100,000 higher than the last one, or what the comps would seem to indicate. And you go, okay, well, that's not what matters. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, people buy the housing payment, and generally what that means is housing payment as a percentage of their household income. So as incomes go up, home prices go up. As interest rates go down, payments go down, so home prices go up. When we look at all of that, until very recently, the number is right on trend. The amount that a household is paying of their household income to be in that home has been pretty reasonable. So we're getting really to the high end of that range, and we are seeing real home prices go to new levels. So there's a little bit of concern with that, but that can extend for a long period of time when we have an undersupply, which we absolutely do. So the lack of supply is not consistent from area to area. So the denser the area you're in, the more built out it is, the stronger and more robust the economy is, the more you're going to have an issue with supply relative to demand. So for all of those reasons, I don't see anything leading to lower home prices anytime soon. And those lower home prices, when they do come, home prices in most markets are cyclical. There will be a correction at some point, but it's going to be further down the line after more home price appreciation.
No, I mean, if you think about what you said without having that chart in mind, if you think about a graph, if you will, and a line going up, say 45 degrees out of that or what have you, and you've got, dots on either side of it. And as the dots, those pieces get above that trend line, if you will, typically they come back to the mean or to that line at some point. They retrace that. But the longer they're outside of that line on the high side or the low side, the more they pull that trend up or down, depending on where they are. So, that line, if they continue to move above it, the real home prices, it just pulls that trend higher up. So when they do pull back, they're pulling back closer to a trend line that, was adjusted because of that. I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but it made sense in my head. So anyway,
we'll follow along. We'll pretend that it made sense to us too.
James is asking, difference between the '08 fudged appraisals and the sky high appraisals based off a market with a choked inventory. Could we see a big drop in price with inventory returns? So I'll let you talk about appraisals now and then, and maybe give a little insight.
Yeah. For the most part, these crazy appraisals in 2006, 2007, 2008 are a myth. The media wants a boogeyman. Were there dirty appraisers out there? Was there a system where lenders could pay appraisers to bring in values? Yes, there was. So I'm not saying that it didn't exist. I'm saying for the most part, we had really high prices because we didn't make people prove they could qualify. You don't have to put money down. You don't have to actually make money. You just say you make money. All of that, and even if you are putting down, it could come from anywhere. We're not documenting it. The loans were the problem then, not the appraisers. The high appraisals were a symptom, not the cause of what we were going through then. And the difference now, saying sky high appraisals based off of a market, an appraiser doesn't go out and say, oh, I've got a contract for $825,000. I'm going to bring this in. The best example I have right now, a home here in Orange, California. It sold for $827,500, 4 offers above $820,000. Our appraisal came in at $770,000. So we went back, did a rebuttal, showed them all of the offers, showed them the homes in the area supporting the higher value. And what our appraiser came back to was saying, yes, you're in that neighborhood, but your home backs to a freeway. So I have to go back and use another comp that also backs to the freeway. So there hadn't been one since last October. So they made a time adjustment, but they're limited in what they can do in terms of a monthly time adjustment. So it was woefully inadequate. So our value came in incredibly low. We put the loan with another lender so that we could order another appraisal because our seller was not doing 770. They said, you have a terrible appraisal, do another one. We did another one. It comes in at 780. Appraiser says the same thing. I understand the market is telling us that they will pay more for this home, beautiful home, great condition, but you have an issue that it backs to the freeway, and we have to do a paired sales analysis showing how the market values or devalues a home that backs to the freeway. So there are appraisal practices that have to be followed. We don't just get to throw those out the window. When the appraisal comes in, the appraisal is also reviewed by the appraisal management company. So there's a staff appraiser at a desk that's looking at it and going, is this a reasonable appraisal? There's a reason why agents, when an offer comes in 100,000 over list, they're not going to take that from a 3% or a 5% down borrower because they know that appraisal is not going to come in. Appraisers are doing their best to document what the market, or to bring in values indicative of what the market is willing to pay. But when you look at an appraisal, every appraisal looks at it three different ways. They look at the income approach, they look at the cost approach. So the income says how much income the property could generate as a rental. And for most of the country, it does not justify the value. So they basically throw that away. They look at the cost approach and say, what would it cost to rebuild this and what's the value of the lot? And now we look at it. And they basically throw that away. They're going off of a comparable sales analysis. So when we have rapidly appreciating values and each sale is 10% higher than the last one, there's not a comparable sale to support it. They have to bracket that sale, meaning there has to be one below it and one above it, and then adjust to bring it into the market value. So we're not having appraisals come in and support what the market is saying. And what on that one that we had that came in low, we went all the way back and forth with the appraiser and the staff appraiser. And basically what their point was is that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are aware that this is an issue, that the market is the true arbiter of what the value is of the home. So from that extent, the home is worth $825,000. We are not going to give high loan to value financing to support those values. So that's why we're seeing this skew towards people with large down payments, cash buyers, because the appraisal then is no longer an issue. Now, when those sales go on the board, that's a comp. Now, when the next buyer comes in and wants to pay a similar amount or a little bit more, we have something to support that. So anyone hoping that these are not real market sales, again, if Jeb, and that one that he was talking about earlier, there were 12 people above their price. This isn't one person paying a crazy value and a dirty appraiser going out and bringing it in. The market is telling you these are the values. An appraiser is not there to tell us what the home is worth. They're there to confirm that it's valuable and reasonable to support the underlying loan that it's the collateral for. So a long way of saying the appraisals are not an issue. They weren't really the issue then. It was the shitty loans that were being done. And they're definitely not an issue now because if anything, they're impeding and sort of putting a little bit of a brake on how high the market is going.
There you go. And with that said, I listened to a really good video the other night with another YouTuber, Matt the Mortgage Guy. If you guys follow him, he's got a good channel too. And he had appraiser on up in Sacramento. He's in Sacramento, and the appraiser was great. In fact, the appraiser has a great blog. And if you're in Sacramento or in that area, it's a great. I don't have it on me. I would link to it, but if you check that video from a couple of days ago, it has it on there. But that appraiser, he addresses some of these questions, and some of them I asked myself. But I asked him, I said, in this market, are you using, a property comes in $100,000 over the asking price, but the comps don't support it? Are you taking those offers from the seller or from the listing agent and helping that prove your case? Is that affecting the value of the property? And he said, yes and no. He didn't say that exactly, but that's where it ended up, because he said, yeah, I'm asking if there were multiple offers. And in some cases, I'm asking the agent for multiple offers if I didn't believe that they actually had them. So I want to see proof of the offers. You can black out whatever's personal, but I want to see the offers to see where they came in and all that good stuff. And what he said was, he's making notes of that. He can't really, he can adjust for markets and what's happening and how things are appreciating to some extent, but he can't just go in there and change a comp because this many people were willing to do that. But he can make notes in the comments to help justify what people are doing. And in some cases, he can bring the value in those cases. In other cases, he can't, just because maybe he can't get that high, even if there's that many people willing to pay for it, just because of what the market is doing in that area. Maybe it's one case or what have you. And at the same time, he says, if you have one comp in an area, for example, that is, abnormal, if you will, way above the rest of the comps, he may not use that comp in order to justify the value of a property just coming to the market, because that might just be an outlier for whatever reason. Like we said a minute ago, somebody that needs to do a 1031, somebody that bought it and paid more because their mom or family lived next door and they were willing to pay a price that nobody else might have been willing to pay because of those circumstances. So, he broke it down in a way, and I'm not doing it justice here. So, but I'll try to find the link here while Josh is talking and maybe post it in the comments if you guys wanted to check it out, because I think it's worth watching and it's well done. So, but if you're here at the moment and you haven't already, do me a favor, hit that like button. And if you don't follow us or subscribe to my channel, I would appreciate if you would do that as well. But to answer the last question on that, James, I don't think you're going to see a big drop in price if inventory returns. The only way you're going to see a big drop in price is if interest rates go way up and supply goes way up at the same time. In that case, you could see that, but neither of those are likely to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, and the last piece there, it's a loaded question, and it says, could we see a big drop in price when inventory returns?
Well,
when is that?
Yeah,
when
exactly. Yeah.
It presumes that at some point there's going to be a spike in inventory, which we've just been going through. There's a lack of supply of homes for people to buy, and people are moving far less often than they used to. So not just a supply of homes that exist, of homes that come on the market and turn over. I don't see that resolving anytime soon.
All right. Good stuff. Let's see here. I'm just reading through some questions, guys. In escrow, what should I be expecting? So just be 82 White is asking, in escrow, what should I be expecting? It depends on where in the escrow process you are, right? I mean, if you're just starting, you got a long ways ahead. It depends on what you've done, right? It's providing a little bit more detail in your question would be helpful. So if you want to put that there, we can address it. I don't know if there's enough there. It could be a loaded question. We could spend an hour just talking about that.
So, yeah, if you're just starting, the key thing to know is there's a bunch of paperwork, and no one likes paperwork. It's important to get to it. So if you have escrow instructions, if you have disclosures, so the seller needs to make a bunch of disclosures to you. It's important to review those, sign and acknowledge them. Escrow is going to need some things signed from you. They're going to need some things from you. Your lender is going to send out disclosures. Those need to get signed unless you're paying cash. Their disclosures need to be signed to keep everything moving forward. They're going to request some updated documentation. That needs to be done to keep the transaction moving forward. You're going to be doing your inspections. The appraisal is going to be ordered. So that first 7 to 10 days of escrow is a really busy and hectic time. And then from there, when you say, Jeb, for the most part, it calms down for 10 or 15 days and then another flurry at closing.
Yeah, I think what a lot of home buyers think is that every day during a 30-day escrow period, they should be doing something. And it's really not the case. I think it's very front loaded and in loaded to some extent, but really front loaded more so than anything else. I mean, right when you're first going into escrow, you're doing home inspection, you're filling out paperwork, you're getting escrow paperwork if you're in California, maybe paperwork from an attorney if you're in another state. Maybe you're having some documents, being sent to the lender, loan application, going into detail depending on what you've done prior to that. And then there's kind of a lull in the process, right? Because the lender is doing their thing. They're in the process of getting your loan approved. The appraisal is being completed, which isn't something that that you go to or deal with. So you're not really involved in that process. And so, depending on what your contingency periods are in the contract or what you've written them, you're trying to cram all of this stuff in that short period of time. And then things kind of chill for a little bit. And, it kind of gives you a breather, which is good. And then at the end, you're doing, signing loan documents and maybe doing a final walkthrough on the property and that sort of thing. But there's really not a lot that you have to do as a home buyer in most cases, right? Your lender and your real estate agent are doing a lot of it behind the scenes. And if they're doing it well, you don't even know about it in some cases. Now, there are things that they need to contact you about to get certain documents and certain items and what have you. But oftentimes there's problems that come up that you're never aware of because, your lender's taking care of it on the back end, getting things squared away, or maybe your real estate agent is negotiating on your behalf to some extent to try to get things done the way you wanted them done without you ever knowing about it. And those are things that I don't bring up because it's just part of my job. So depending on where you are in the process will kind of, depend on what is going down at that time. Elizabeth brought up a good question here, though. Actually, we got a super chat from Radiant. Let's see, where is that thing? Radiant Kratos. No question. Just want to say thanks for all the great information. Been a huge help. I appreciate you and the contribution, man. Thank you very much. Or I'm not sure if you're a man, but thank you either way.
Man, woman, person.
Absolutely.
We value you.
Let's see here what we got. I saw a good question. It was from Elizabeth. So this kind of goes back to what we talked about a minute ago, or just kind of ended with. Is it normal that an underwriter is taking a week to approve my loan? Josh?
It's not unheard of. It should be 7 days or less. So remember, in 7 days, there's 5 business days. Our slowest lenders are about 4 days right now. Our fastest are about 4 hours. We got one this morning that we submitted in the morning. We got the approval right after lunch, but a couple of them are 2-3 days. Mainly those are jumbo lenders or lenders with more complex loans. The important part is you as a borrower, the only way you know that the file went to the underwriter is your loan officer telling you they did. And again, not to bash on loan officers and mortgage professionals, but I would lean more towards manner and then saying, we're stuck in underwriting because, we go back to last July and August when rates were super low and everyone was still getting used to working from home. Everyone in the mortgage industry is still getting used to working from home. We were 2-3 weeks in underwriting, and most every lender was. Some were worse than that.
I think that's when I refinanced. It took like
we got you through
days.
before that. You didn't even get to see the worst. July and August was awful. But right now, rates are up a little bit. The refinances are down. Lenders have staffed up. Like really 4 or 5 business days should be the far end of it. So if you know for a fact it was submitted to underwriting, somewhere around 4 or 5 business days should be your worst case for getting an approval back.
All right. Sardir Ahmed is asking, can a conventional loan get eligible for forbearance? I'm about to close on a new house next week. After that, that if I needed to take, can I take forbearance if you needed it? Yes, on conventional loans, but you reaching that point. Actually, you may have already reached it at that point. If you haven't already filed for mortgage forbearance, I'm not sure you have the opportunity to do it at this point. I'm not sure how these lenders are approaching this. I think you had to either be in forbearance by the end of February. And if you were in forbearance during that period of time, then you could ask for an extension and what have you. I don't think, honestly, I should know this as much as I've talked about forbearance, but I don't think at this point you are eligible for a new forbearance based on what's going on. I need to look into that, in fact, because some things have changed and there's a lot going on that front. But I'm unsure. But what I would tell you is if you're closing on your house next week and you already need forbearance, probably shouldn't buy the house. I mean, that's probably not what you want to hear, but that's the reality. Because you're going to sign a document when you sign those loan documents that more or less confirms your ability to continue to make that payment. Yeah. So just keep that in mind. Nicole Jansen's regular here. Thank you for joining us again. Can I use a 401k for down payment? Does this count as DTI?
So, most loans, so Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, no. It always was with FHA and VA.
Yes, you can use a 401k, but no.
No, you can absolutely use the 401k, right. But it does not get counted towards your debt to income ratio. So the logic behind that is that if you default on it and don't pay it back, it doesn't show up on your credit, it's not a problem. You'll end up with some tax issues for not repaying the loan. But again, Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, you do not have to count it. Jumbo lenders, portfolio lenders, it's up to them. Most of them follow Fannie, Freddie, but there are plenty that will require that to be included in your debt to income ratio.
All right. we'll talk about Al Bundy is asking about interest rates and some jumbo loans. We'll talk about this stuff in a little bit. I want to get to some more questions before we jump into those. Billy's asking about thoughts on NACA. I did a video on this a couple weeks ago. I would encourage you just to go look at that instead of me getting into it. And in fact, I would watch the video, but I would read the comments more than anything else, because that is people actually going through the process and telling you exactly what they experienced. And honestly, it's better than my video because those people are true testaments as to the process, what is required, what is not. In fact, I think I flagged one at the top or pinned it on that video because I believe it was a female, gave me really good breakdown of what was required, what went through, and what have you. And so I will tell you, I will leave you with this on the subject. They're not for everyone, and they take a very long time in most cases to go through it. But check out that video, and that should help you out.
Jeb, as I have not seen that video or read your comment thread, are you telling me that there's people in that comment thread that have had a success story with?
Oh yeah, yeah. There are a couple. There are far less than those that
that are horror stories
that have been dragged along, so to speak. So
yeah.
Why new builder has Melrose tax? How long does this tax last? So if you're not in California, you probably don't know what Melrose is. Melrose is a tax here in California. It's basically it happens when new construction properties are built, new developments, if you will. And what happens is this is for infrastructure of the community, to build things like fire departments, police departments, parks, that sort of thing. It's to build out communities, and sometimes it's new developments in a new city. Here in Orange County, we have a Ladera Ranch, for example. It's a newer city for Orange County as a whole, right? It wasn't always here, and it was developed in the last 25 years or so. And most of that city has Melrose tax. And what it is a tax in addition to your property taxes, because what happens is when they build those communities, they need money to build this different infrastructure. They sell bonds to do it. And how you repay those bonds is by upping your property tax. So there's tax in addition to your normal tax that you pay to cover that. How long do they last depends on how long those bonds were that they purchased to do it. 25 to 40 years is what I'm used to in hearing. Josh, any thoughts on that and time frames?
No, that's pretty typical. And any development you're in, you can get that information up front to find out how much longer it's going to run for. It's not permanent. It's there to cover. If you look back in the 50s and 60s, when new areas sprung up, the government just kind of knew, hey, as we grow and we need more housing, we're going to need more schools and roads and police stations. So it was kind of built into the budget and built into those property taxes. And we got more into the 80s, 90s. They realized, hey, our city's pretty much built out. So if you want to add another development over here that's going to need those services, you're going to have to pay for them. And it was passed along to the homeowners.
Yeah. And along with Prop 13 here in California, you can't just, somebody buys a property, you can't just change the tax basis in a certain area to accommodate, infrastructure and that sort of thing. So they have to do it through a separate tax, and that's Melrose in that case. So for all of you not in California, you're probably thinking like, what the hell are they talking about? But your state may have something similar.
But what I would say, Jeb, to everyone everywhere, it's something that homeowners or home buyers overlook when they're shopping. Check your tax rate before you make your offer. We have a somewhat famous city here in Southern California, the city of Compton. And about 2 years ago, I learned an interesting fact that they passed a citywide property tax that puts them up over 2% for homes in there. And so you look at it and you may be in, Hawthorne, and you're like, I'm getting priced out of Hawthorne. I'll go look in Compton and it's 100,000 cheaper. Well, most of that benefit goes away when you factor in the taxes. So that's not unique to California. I know a lot of states have big variance. A high property tax state like Texas, they can be as low as 1.5. They can be as high as 2.5
or 3.
Make
3.
Make sure wherever you're looking, you know what those property taxes are and factor it in. I mean, your lender's going to look at it as soon as you say, hey, I got a property under contract. It's the first thing we do when we're updating our files. We pull the property taxes and look at it and make sure it's not throwing our debt to income ratio off, but you really should be taking that into account before you make your offer.
All right. We got Stephanie from Huntington Beach. Thanks, Stephanie, for joining us. That's our market if you don't know where we are. Nella is asking a question about appraisal reviews. So appraisal came in less. They're doing a review on it. Thoughts on how long that might take, Josh?
24 to 48 hours. And depending on how complex it is, depending on if it's an easy one, either an easy yes or an easy no. So let's say it came in low, the appraiser doesn't like it, the review appraiser looks at it and goes, hey, this is a terrible appraisal, the value's there. Or vice versa. They look at it and they go, it's a great appraisal, there's nothing to argue with. It can be really quick. Or if it requires some more research, maybe 2-3 days at the longest. When the appraisal goes to review, they know we're far into the game and it's pretty urgent to get that done.
All right. Got a question here from Shanna asking, should I report my PPP payment if I receive from my employer to my loan broker, even if it was just $2,500? So I'm assuming she has a deposit into her account somehow from her employer, maybe. And she's asking if she has to document that payment. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, the PPP loans were loans to employers for keeping people on payroll. So it sounds like possibly your employer shared that with you guys. And if so, that's fine. Like Jeb said, if that deposit shows up on the last couple of months' bank statements, we may have to explain it. If it was prior to that, it shouldn't be reported as income. If it showed up on a paycheck, you'd see it in the year-to-date earnings or in last year's W-2. So I would definitely, let's back up and rephrase. I would say always tell your lender everything. My job as a loan officer is really as an editor. You have a story. Tell me your entire story. We're going to bullet point it.
Creative, Josh.
We're going to throw it up on the wall. And my job is to edit it so that by the time it gets to an underwriter, they see the prettiest, best story ever.
Josh is creating fairy tales.
They pull out their stamp and they go, yes, I love this story and I'm signing off on it. But we have a client right now. It's a joint client of ours, Jeb. We didn't share the joy with you. She is trying to help us by giving us bits and pieces of the story, and it's making it a lot harder. It's going to be fine. We're going to close the loan, but we finally just had to have that same exact conversation today. Tell us everything. My job is to get you that loan. I mean, if you tell me you filed bankruptcy yesterday, I'm going to have to disclose that, but there's really nothing you can do that's going to damage you from this end. Our job is to make sure we're framing that as well as possible.
You're going to love the next question that's going to come up here, Josh. So I'm going to make you wait for that one. Actually, we're going to go to it because
did my wife start asking questions? She's queuing me up. She's giving me softballs.
Oh man, here we go. So GD is going to ask you. It gave us $5. So thank you for the super chat. Very appreciative of you. This is one of Josh's favorite questions. He loves Veterans United, and he's going to tell you how much here in just a moment. So GD's asking a question about VA loans, asking about experience and that sort of thing. So I will let you take this one for, hit a home run here.
So, yeah, neither one of those lenders is interested in veterans above and beyond what they can profit from them. If you look at terms and you want to talk about something, shoot us an email, because I actually have a study. A study was done on this showing where pricing for lenders, because every lender, their name goes on the grant deed, the deed of trust that is recorded on every transaction, and there's HMDA data attached to that, and it's analyzed, and we can't hide from what we do. Those are two of the highest priced lenders in America, and if you look at you type in any VA loan search term, the top result you're going to see is a paid advertisement for Veterans United telling you how much they love veterans and how they take great care of them. Yet when I show you that report, they overcharge veterans both in interest rate and fees, and not a little bit, a ton. So they talk about 200,000 positive reviews from veterans, and that's just is horrifying, because that tells you how many people that they did terrible things to in terms of rates and fees. So They're essentially a big call center. You have a kid who's been doing loans for about 15 minutes that's going to say yes or no. Largely what they will tell you, they have an overlay. If you had less than a 640 credit score, we do those 8 days a week. Every broker in America does those 8 days a week. They will tell you not that they don't do them. They will tell you VA doesn't do those. They have debt to income ratio caps that other lenders don't have. So for most borrowers, that stuff doesn't come into play. If you have a 700 credit score and a reasonable debt to income ratio, they're going to tell you, yep, it's great. And for the honor of doing business with them, you're going to overpay. Navy Federal is slightly better in terms of terms. You're not going to pay as much as you would going to Veterans United, but you will again be back in that same call center hell dealing with a kid who doesn't know much about loans and is going to hopefully get your loan in 45 to 60 days.
So
Most
I'm going to,
I'm going to say, why don't you jump in? Because I think I know what you're going to say next.
well, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, Josh could ramble on about this. Send me an email. I'll put it up here on the screen in just a second here. And what I'll do is I'll connect you, regardless of what state you're in, with somebody that is a broker that you can compare it to. So depending on what state you're in, send an email to Joshua or myself, doesn't matter which one, and you can get compared. It's not going to cost you any money. See what they're charging versus what somebody else is charging. And then that way you'll know if you're getting a good deal. And that's the easiest way to do it, regardless of whether you're using one of those guys or somebody else. Always compare it to, those third parties, or, get 3 different quotes in some cases, right? If you're going to a bank, get a quote from a broker or a credit union. If you're going to a credit union, get one from a bank and a broker or whatever. But always make sure you get one from a broker, at least something to compare it to, because typically speaking, they're not paying for commercials out there. They're not paying for radio ads. They're not paying for all of that stuff. They don't have all of that marketing to pay for one. But the rates are better, and costs are better because of, those things.
I don't need to know anything. If you shopped with Veterans United, we would be 0.5% lower in interest rate and $1,500 to $2,000 lower in cost, because I know what they quote 8 days a week, every day. And it's probably closer to 1% difference in the interest rate, which is insane. So you look at that, it's gotten a little bit better in the last year or two, because there are a few people, a friend of mine, Chris Griffith, out there on the internet, just making as many people as possible aware of this. So more veterans are aware. It's just, veterans are a trusting group and they like to reward people who are looking out for them. And Veterans United has done a spectacular job of convincing them that they're out there for them, and they're not. They're a big call center that's there for profit. And what Jeb said is exactly correct. I'm not saying don't talk to them, but make sure you talk to a broker in your area before you do that loan. You'll notice a massive difference in expertise and service, and a spectacular difference in the terms that you're offered.
All right. Thank you. So that should help you out with that question, GD. Again, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. And if you're here, you haven't already, hit that like button. I think we're at 244 people watching right now, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
We
guys
only
for
had
joining
85 last week when everyone was having corned beef and cabbage and green beers and not paying attention to 2 guys yammering on about real estate.
Too good. I saw a question here a moment ago. I'm kind of going back up, trying to answer some, because there's been some good questions here that I want to answer. Here's one that doesn't really pertain to a lot of people, but Lisa Nicole's asking, is it a good time to sell in San Diego? I own a townhome, been thinking of selling or refinancing. I would say, if you're going to sell, what are you going to do? Are you going to rent something, and are you trying to buy something else? Like, what is the reason? Because you're thinking of selling and or refinancing. So those are 2 different things entirely. If you plan on staying put, then obviously you should consider refinancing. If you're thinking you want to make a move, I would say if refinancing makes sense now and you're going to be there for 6 or so more months, and the cost to refinance is, if what you're going to save, how am I putting this? What am I trying to say here? If you do the cost benefit analysis, basically, like, what you're saving into what it's going to cost you, and it makes sense that you're going to be in the property for that amount of time, then refinance. If you're not, then probably don't refinance. But if you're selling, the one thing I would tell you is that, that is, you're in a good position. You're in San Diego, one of the hottest markets at the moment. You're going to have no issues selling your property, assuming you price it correctly. But, if you're one of those people that think, hey, I'm just going to go out and buy another property when I sell this, or I'm going to sit on the sidelines waiting for properties to pull back in value and buy something cheaper, I would encourage you to potentially reconsider that. Talk to a real estate agent in your area and have that conversation. Let them guide you. And if you don't know anybody, know a lot of great agents in San Diego. Doesn't matter what area you're in, I can put you in touch with somebody so you can reach out on that front.
Talk to both. You guys hear me say this every week. Numbers never lie. So in this situation, we want to look at two different sets of numbers. Talk to a realtor, see what they think they could sell the home for and what you would net if you walked away, and then think, what am I going to do with that money? If you're thinking of staying, get the numbers on a refinance. One of the biggest mistakes that I have people tell us all the time is, oh, I'm not going to refinance. We're only going to be here for another year. I won't recoup my costs. And oftentimes these people are on a 4.5% interest rate, and we could do a no-cost loan 1% lower than that. So your timeline is important in deciding how we're going to structure the loan and what costs you do or don't pay. But again, numbers never lie. So Lisa, get a side-by-side analysis of a couple loan options. Look at a net sheet from a good real estate pro in your area, and then that'll tell you what you want to do.
She later said that she owns another home in Texas. So if you're planning on moving and taking advantage of the market, you can't go wrong. I mean, that's the reality. So, talk to a pro though. I
will always say, and this is less so now because Californians keep leaving California and pushing up prices everywhere else. I've had a lot of clients, friends, family move out of state because it's cheaper and then regret it and wish they had kept their home here because they got priced out and couldn't come back. So you have a nice hedge there if you have that property and you can rent it and see what you're thinking about out of state. But if you know you're going to Texas and not coming back, by all means, you got all your options.
There you go. Jimmy's asking about supplemental taxes. So supplemental taxes, and Josh can probably explain this better than I can. So what happens is when you buy a property, you are buying it at whatever value. Let's say you buy it at $500,000, but let's say the previous owner of that property purchased it at $100,000 for whatever reason. Depending on where you are in the country, you might think these numbers are crazy, but $100,000. So the tax basis of the previous owner is based off that $100,000 purchase price in most cases. Well, when you buy it, you paid more for that property. Well, it takes a while for the county to adjust the property taxes based on the new purchase price. So what happens is when you close on your loan, you're essentially paying property taxes based off the old tax assessment of that property. When they get reassessed with the county is going to say, you know what you paid us is far less than what you should have paid us because the value is higher. Here's a supplemental tax bill to make up for that difference. That only happens typically one time unless you do some improvements to your property or at some point in the future, but one time, and then you pay that assessment, at which point then your new tax basis is based off when you bought the property, and going forward, you should be fine and not receive any additional tax supplemental bills. So I don't know if that's just a California thing and how that works, or if that's out of state too, Josh.
It's not only California. It's most common in California just because of the way things work. Every state is a little bit weird. Whenever I talk to my friends in other states and how they do loans, every state does a little bit different. What I would say, Jimmy, is if you're in California, generally, we are always, I said a few minutes ago, one of the first things we do is look up the tax rate, and we make sure our file is set up with the accurate taxes. So even though your taxes might be $100 a month, we're going to put them in at the $550 that they're going to be. And the benefit to that is if you're impounding your taxes, there will be enough in the impound account that when that supplemental tax bill comes, you can go back to your lender and say, hey, you guys have been paying these really low taxes, but you've been collecting the actual taxes. I need you to pay this supplemental bill for me.
There you go. You guys taking one question way over talk, Billy Hop said.
Oh my goodness.
I think he's talking to you, Josh.
We better stop talking.
Is it a good idea to buy a secondary home now, Josh? So we recently had, for anybody buying a property, you've probably seen the headlines, investment properties, second homes now have a potential additional fee added to them based on some new guidelines that were added out there. So I would tell you second home markets right now are as hot as primary home markets. So if you're looking to buy a second home, especially in any sort of resort town, any destination area, if you will, chances are you're going to pay a premium for that property just because there's a lot of people doing the exact same thing. Is it a good idea? Depends on you, right? What you're buying it for, what's it going to cost you? Does it make sense? Those are things that we can't weigh, but I don't think you're going to go wrong doing it. But some people get caught up in the frenziness of buying in areas that are specifically resort towns. They go to Mammoth for the weekend. They have a great time and
I
it's
want one of
snow
those.
and, oh man, this is awesome. I'm going to buy a house here. And then next year there's no snow. And then the following year there's no snow. And they're like, what the hell did I do? So don't get caught up in the hype of that sort of thing. If you're going to buy a second home, make sure that it meets everything. But if you're doing that, then I don't think you can go wrong. But what about interest rates on second homes lately, Josh? Have they creeped up?
So we have half of our lenders that have put that in place. Short answer is Fannie Mae said we're only going to do 7% or less of our loans going forward for non-owner occupants, so second homes or in investments. So we've seen some additional add-ons from about half of our lenders. So as of today, still have about half of our lenders not charging that. And what they're saying is, hey, we're nowhere near 7% of our loans being made to those folks, so we don't need to put the brakes on it. So what I would say, if you talk to a lender and the rate seems high, it may not be that they're a high rate lender. It may just be that they are charging it. It's another instance where talking to a broker is always a good idea because, like I said, about half my lenders are charging higher rates. Others aren't. So there's a pretty big spread from lender to lender on second homes right now.
Got it. All right. So let's move along here. Adrian's actually a member of the channel. Thank you, Adrian. Sorry it took so long to get down here and get to your question, my friend. There's a lot of questions up here. We're just scrolling down slowly, asking, does owing taxes have anything to do with qualifying for refinance? So let's say you owe back taxes, maybe you owe taxes for this year on a property. How does the lender look at that, Josh?
It may impact you, it may not. And the reason why I say is if it's gone to a tax lien status, they're going to find that. They're going to search your Social Security number and they'll see that there's a tax lien, and that will either need to be paid or in a payment plan. Payment plans have some requirements of whether they're eligible. But let's say in 2018, you owed $10,000 in taxes and you didn't pay it. It hasn't gone to a lien. And right now, all we need is a 2020 W-2 and a pay stub for your loan. We have no way of knowing that you owe those back taxes. So it's a gray area. So it would be important, again, one of those things where I would say, absolutely tell your lender, tell the person you're working with, and let them guide you through it and let you know whether it's an issue or not.
Perfect. You think I'd get a water sponsor? Anybody here sell water? I drink a lot of water. I could throw it on the camera each week.
The LaCroix is a higher class water. So
that's terrible. Anyway, Odo MC, can realtors legally accept tips? I do here every week with super chats. But no, to answer the question, I think your realtor would, they've done a good job for you. Say thank you. Maybe you get them a small gift at closing or something like that. Not necessary. I don't expect anything from my clients. I give gifts often, but receive things as well, but it's not expected. Just most people are just doing their job and taking care of you. And in this market, I mean, there's a lot of people working on everybody's behalf. A simple thank you is a good way to show that. M. Canos, can you share your thoughts on buying condos in Southern California? My partner and I were thinking of buying a house by the end of the year, but these prices are squeezing us out. So I would say what I'm going to say is going to pertain to any market. There are benefits to owning condos as well as single family homes. You have to weigh what's important to you in buying a property. Some nice things about buying a condo versus a single family home is that maintenance, right? Exterior maintenance, common ground maintenance, typically speaking, is covered by, your association fee that you pay every single month. So you don't have to save for those items. You don't have to budget for those items because they're going to be taken care of, assuming you're buying in a good development that's well taken care of and what have you. One of the downsides, I just mentioned it, there's an association fee, right? So depending on how much that fee is, can affect your ability to purchase or what have you. I think about every $500 or so is about $100,000 in purchase price, right, Josh? Give or take a little bit. Yeah. So if you buy a property that has anywhere close to, say, a $500 HOA, and that seems outrageous probably for a lot of people out there, that's $100,000 in purchase price. Now, there's a big disparity at the moment between single family home prices and condo prices in most markets. So, I don't know that 100,000 is going to make or break, but again, there are pros and cons to each. Single family homes, you can do what you want to with them. you don't have to get someone's approval in most cases unless you're in an HOA. You don't have HOA fees. Single family homes will typically appreciate faster than that of a condo. There's pros and cons to both. I could go into a lot of detail. In fact, I could do a full video on this where I break it down, but I would say you just have to go with what's right for you. I wouldn't shy away from a condo just because people, there's people out there that like, I would never own a condo. It's like an apartment. That's fair to say, but I know a lot of people that started with condos that now own big properties, luxury properties. I mean, you start somewhere, and in this market, if that fits your budget and the property fits what you need in a property, then I wouldn't be against it. Anything you want to add on that front, Josh, on condos? And
no, other than they do tend to appreciate later than homes, than single family residences, and drop sooner when the market goes down. And the reason for that is, other things being equal, the majority, but not all, buyers would prefer a single family residence. If they can afford it, they'll do that. As homes get less affordable, people get pushed into condos. And on the way down, when homes are getting more affordable, they'll gravitate towards homes versus condos. But they're not a glorified apartment. You own it. You have the ability to build up equity, to pay it down over time. Just there are some complications with an association that you should be aware of, but I certainly wouldn't shy away from it. The thing I always tell clients, again, you guys are probably tired of hearing me say numbers never lie. Run the numbers on a single family and compare it to a condo, just so you're accounting for the HOA and seeing exactly what that difference equates to with the properties that you're looking at.
So my shirt will say good stuff. Yours
mine
will say
says numbers never lie. Cool.
And
I like
perfect.
it.
And we have two of them. Maybe it says one on the back and one on the front. Georgina saying hi, James saying hi, both regulars here. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm just reading through some questions here, trying to find one. Nicole Jansen's asked a question earlier, but this is also a good one and this will, probably help a lot of people out there. Is there a way to get qualified with 1 year of self-employment income if it's a side business, side gig? A lot of people are doing side gigs now. Some people are doing YouTube. I mean, can you imagine doing YouTube as a side gig? Wow. Anyway, I also have a W-2 with more than 2 year history. So how do lenders look at that 1 year of self-employment, Josh?
So there are guidelines where you can use self-employment income in less than 2 years. In this specific situation, with it being a side job, it's going to be fairly difficult. I wouldn't say it's impossible, and it's largely going to come down to the automated underwriting findings, and it's going to be more likely on a conventional loan. If you have an FHA or a VA loan, we're going to need the 2 year history of it. It's a gray area, but leaning more towards not being able to use it.
All right. Daniel is asking a good question here, saying, don't understand why you guys say that waiving appraisal contingency doesn't matter much for buyers with big down payments. Can you explain this? I don't say that. Maybe if I did say that's not what I meant to say in that regard. Waiving appraisal contingency does matter. But where it doesn't matter and how, with that statement there is that typically speaking, if a buyer is willing to waive the appraisal contingency, right, the buyer has to be willing to do that up front, and they have to understand the repercussions of that up front, that if an appraisal comes in less, they may have to make up the difference on that appraisal in order to move forward. So with that said, people with larger down payments typically have the ability to restructure their loan potentially and use some of that down payment money to pay for the difference in the appraised value versus the purchase price, and still have a sizable down payment in order to purchase that property, maybe and avoid PMI in some cases, or what have you, depending on the situation, depending on how much money they are putting down. Now, where I would say it doesn't matter if you have somebody that has tons of money in the bank, and they understand that an appraisal comes in short, that they have the ability to pay the difference. If they understand that and they have the money, then it doesn't matter. In that case, it doesn't. But if you're someone who has 10% down and you're thinking that the appraisal could come in less and you don't have much more than that 10% down payment, it definitely matters on that appraisal contingency. So just keep it in, it's all in context. Depends on each buyer's a little bit different in how they're approaching that situation. But understand, any buyer that is signing off that appraisal contingency needs to fully understand what they are doing. I think there's a lot of people out there potentially recommending that this is what you do, and buyers are saying, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get in this property, and they don't understand what they're signing. And that is a lack of education on somebody's part there. I'm not going to point the finger because I don't know, and I'm just making up things and just talking randomly into a camera at the moment. But Josh, anything you want to add to that?
No, again, it's not that it doesn't matter. It always matters to the buyer. You want to make sure you're doing something prudent. Right. The reason why for a seller, they want that bigger down payment is simply because it's not a deal killer. If you have 5% down and the appraisal comes in 10% low, it's a dead deal. So that's really what it comes down to. Does the buyer have the ability to absorb a short appraisal with the assets that they have available and what they have on the contract that they want to use?
All right. Let's see here. So Simon, you ask a similar question to someone that asked one earlier. Just submitted my earnest money to. I'm going to start over. Just submitted my earnest money for my new construction. What happens after that? So someone earlier asked a question about just going into escrow and what happens. I would encourage you just to go back to look at that. It's, within the first 5 minutes of the video, because that will give you a pretty good idea of that process. We talk about it in a little bit of detail as to what happens in that process. We got David here, who is an appraiser, being pressured to hit the selling prices now more than ever. And then, saying that if prices do tank, then they'll be blamed for over appraising. No different than what's happened in the past. I mean, there's always a fall guy, David. Unfortunately,
no. But what I would say, we talked at the open on this. This is all of the comments here. People that are in the market and trying to buy now, they know how awful the market is for buyers. We talk about it as professionals. It's an awful market for us. David's an appraiser. It's just a different type of appraiser, a different type of professional. It's terrible for appraisers also, because they do get pressure when there's 10 offers. That situation that I told you before, 5 offers over 820, and they're saying our appraisal guidelines say I cannot appraise it for more than 780. We had 2 appraisals, 770 and 780. So it is what it is, a lot, but it doesn't mean you're not getting pressured and not having a hard time when comps don't support what the market is telling you it's there for. I think an important thing to remember is an appraiser is bound by the guidelines of their industry to put a report together to state what those guidelines say it is valued at. The market tells you what the value is. If there's 10 offers for $1 million and the appraiser says with the available comps it's $900,000, it doesn't mean that the appraiser is right on the value. The market is right on the value. The appraiser is correct in these are what the appraisal guidelines allow us to bring it in at. And it's something we could sit here and do 2 hours just on, is that right? Is it wrong? Right. There needs to be a break on the market when it's as hot as it is right now. And unfortunately, it's not fun being the appraiser, being the person putting the brake on the market.
Absolutely. We're going to throw Josh a little love here. James Choi, a regular YouTuber, in fact, somebody that found us on YouTube, reached out to Josh, had a really good experience, and happy with it. So, he's encouraging you, if you're in California, to reach out to Josh and be taken care of. So do that.
No, and James has been great, and James fought through this. Same thing, making offers, over bids, and they were frustrated, and his wife was considering giving up, and the conversation we had is, it's a reasonable conclusion to make at this point. We were telling everyone, Jeb, in December, no, don't do that, stick with it, you'll get an offer. And this market's gotten crazy enough that it could be a reasonable decision. They stuck with it, they made another offer, and they got that property under contract, and now we're playing the waiting game to see how that appraisal comes in.
Absolutely. Let's see here. Clip some easy, a regular here as well, asking, do you foresee a one-time federal state tax implemented for out-of-state home buyers? Surely the government will find a way to join the party and make some money too. So nothing that I'm aware of at the moment. You never know what's going to come down, especially in situations like this. I'm not aware of anything. The only crazy tax I'm aware of it here in California that, they're trying to tax people's income if you move out of state, at a high rate. It's crazy what California is trying to do. So if any percentage of your income is earned here in California, they want to tax it. Let's see here. Buffer Monster, do you suggest purchasing new construction versus existing homes? Is the completion the same? Is the competition the same as existing homes? Do I need to offer more for new construction as I would existing? Tough question. One we get quite often. We address this question every single week. There used to be a time where, you went in for new construction, they had a set price on it. That's the price you paid on contract. You added builder upgrades or what have you. That became your price. That was it. New construction has changed recently. I don't know, when it actually made the shift, but as the market has gotten more heated, supply has gone down. Builders are likely looking at, a situation where they're not going to be able to build, maybe as fast as they have in the past because of lumber cost or whatever it is. And so now they're taking, they're doing the same thing, right? They want some of the party. And so they're asking for highest and best offers in some of these cases. So you going in and just picking a model and paying a price may not happen. You may have to overbid on this property now or come in with your highest and best offer, and you might be up against a couple of different people in that situation. So, I don't have a clear-cut answer for you. In this market, I would tell you, don't shy away from one or the other. I mean, new construction is an animal in its own right. My whole thing with new construction is if you're buying new construction, try to get in the earlier phases of that development because you will reap the rewards in most cases of them building it out. If you're buying in the last phase of a development, you're not in the same position as you would be otherwise. So take that into consideration. I don't really have much more to offer than that because, it's going to depend on the area that you're in and the new construction and what have you. It's hard to say what all goes into that. Anything you want to add on that one?
Yeah, I was at a conference with a bunch of originators a week ago and again last week. So people from all around the country. We don't have a lot of new construction here in Southern California, so I don't deal with it a ton. But two things that they're telling us builders are doing now. One is builders have now adopted the highest and best. I don't know exactly how that works when someone comes in that they throw that on them. Obviously, they have a limit to the homes they have available, and they're going back to the people that want to buy them and saying, what is your offer? What will you offer me for this home? So we're seeing that, which mitigates some of the benefit of buying new construction. The other one, we heard that some of them are putting clauses in there where they can raise the price during the construction period based off of construction costs. I have no idea how they're writing this clause into the contract. But if you saw last week, the National Association of Home Builders released a number. I don't know if it's legit or if it's industry propaganda, but they said the cost of lumber in the last 12 months has added $24,000 to the price of a home. So, I mean, it sounds excessive to me. I don't know how that could possibly be accurate, but it has added a number, a legitimate dollar amount. Is it 5,000? Is it 15,000? Is it 24,000? I don't know. And that eats into their profits. So they're trying to protect themselves against that and participate in upside in a market that is rapidly appreciating.
Good stuff. I'm going to, we're going to talk about interest rates here in just a minute. I know there's a lot of people asking about rates in here. So we're going to address it. I want to address a question here from Richard though. Seller's market, why not get an appraisal? Go to Zillow and list your home. Talks about commission, which I'm not going to get into, but get your comps, look at the local market. Don't use a realtor to sell your house. That's definitely one approach. And in this market, I will tell you, it's easier to sell your house now probably than ever. But what people don't understand is there's more into it than just putting a house on the market and getting a contract in and going into escrow and it closing and all is good. There are a lot of factors people don't take into this that us as realtors do, the professionals out there. And that is make sure the buyers that are buying your house are qualified to purchase your house. I mean, we're doing a lot of this due diligence up front. And again, I mean, I'm not here to sell myself. I'm just going to give you some brief things that we do. Something goes wrong in the purchase of that property, negotiations, we're the ones handling that, right? Repair requests come up, things come up during a contract, buyers want to back out. Us as realtors, we're the ones, the glue holding this thing together and making sure that, I's are dotted and T's are crossed. One of the largest financial investments for most people that they'll ever make when on the buying and selling side. And, depending on what state you're in, there's a lot of disclosures, a lot of things that you have to fill out, a lot of things that you have to provide to the buyer of that property in order to not put yourself in a pickle, so to speak, and potentially get sued. California, very aggressive state when it comes to people, litigation, and what have you. There is a ton of information that has to be filled out, disclosed, and different documents that have to be given to both buyer and seller. So there's more than that. And the professionals in the market are not just putting a sign in your yard and selling your house. That's not what we do. That's not what I do. I don't market your house. That's not what I get paid to do. I get paid to get you to the finish line. And I will tell you, out of the last 4 or 5 transactions I've had, there's a lot going on in these transactions in a market right now where things are moving very, very quickly. What happens when that appraisal comes in less on that sell of that property because you got an appraisal and now somebody is offered more for that property and they've waived their appraisal contingency, and now the appraisal comes in less? And what are you going to do as a buyer? I mean, how are you going to handle that? You need somebody there to help guide you and walk you through that process. And I could go on and on about that, but I'm not going to. So we're going to talk about interest rates here.
Hold on, Jeb. Before we do that, let me throw my 2 cents in, because we do probably 3 to 5 for sale by owner transactions a year. Not because we do anything. A client will refer someone, hey, I'm buying my neighbor's house. Hey, I went out, I found this house. And what I can say, I wouldn't say 100% of the time, 90% of the time, it is an absolute shit show. And if we weren't involved, nothing would get done. It wouldn't get done successfully. Most of the time, there's some type of dispute between the buyer and seller that causes delays or problems. There is a ton that goes into it. Again, without debating 6% commission, just saying, I will tell you that a professional in the transaction is worth a chunk of money. If you've sold 20 houses and you feel like you're an expert and you can do it and you know all the disclosure laws in your state and can cover your ass so that you don't get sued, by all means, go about it, but you would be the exception rather than the rule if you are accurate that you can do all of those things. So that's not, I don't make my money selling homes. I just do get on the wrong side of it 2, 3, 4 times a year. We just closed one that it was a nightmare getting anything out of the seller. They opened escrow and basically did nothing. They made no disclosures. California is a very consumer friendly state. If our buyers wanted to go and cause problems for them, they could. So just be careful.
Yeah. I mean, I would tell you, if you're even considering that, just interview a realtor. If they can't provide their value to you, if they can't lay that out to you in terms that you can understand, then give it a shot and try to do it yourself. But I would tell you, most realtors, the professionals out there, the ones that know what they're doing, know the pros and cons of doing both and can tell you why it's not a good idea to attempt that, and why us as realtors have a profession. If everybody could sell their own houses, you wouldn't need us. And people have been trying to do the for sale by owner thing for a very long time, most unsuccessfully. All right, interest rates, Josh. This is why people show up. 257 people here at the moment. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're watching. Interest rates. So, Josh, some of the things that have come up that I have you address here in your brief explanation of interest rates are, someone asked, they thought you had heard. They thought they had heard you mention maybe potentially 2%, under 2% at some point in the future. Do you still think that? Maybe let's start off. Where are rates now versus where they were a week ago? We don't need numbers verbatim exactly like they are, but give us an idea, and then maybe where you see us over the next couple of weeks, and then you can address long term.
For conventional loans for the best qualified borrowers, we were inching up to that 3.25, 3.375 range, and then the last 2-3 days, we've finally seen this long downtrend where it was just nowhere but bond prices down, interest rates up. It's finally broken the last 3 days. We've seen 3 positive days in a row, and inching back down towards 3%. I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of tested that level of getting back down to 3. On the government loans, your best qualified borrowers are at 2.75, and that's held pretty steady. So, again, rates are awesome. When we were asked this question, looking back in December, what do you see happening next year? We thought a lot of the same, that they would stay lower longer, but that our worst case would be that 3.25% range. So for the time being, it looks like that should be the worst of what we have. There was a lot of inflation fears. People were freaking out, and rates are going to go to the high threes. It's possible because the next 3 months, we're going to have very hot year-over-year inflation figures. And the reason why, that yearly figure that you see every month when CPI comes out, they take the monthly figures for the last 12 months. And every month, 1 month drops off and the new month pops on. So the months that are going to be dropping off, March of last year was negative. April was bigger negative, and May was slightly less negative. So you have a negative number for inflation dropping off and a positive number coming on. So we're going to see inflation up at 2.5%, 2.75% over the next few months. And a lot of times you've heard the saying, buy the rumor, sell the fact. So I'm hoping that the selling in the bond market was selling the rumor, and not even a rumor, of just knowing that that inflation number is going to come. If you've been watching the news, the Fed chair and the Treasury Secretary have been testifying the last couple of days in front of Congress, and both of them believe and are telling the market that we think the inflation is transitory and will be gone by the end of the year, and that's 100% accurate. You know, the question you had asked, do I still think that we're going to see 2% interest rates, or possibly even lower than that at some point? I still absolutely do. Our government, we've talked about this before, and the only reason why I mentioned Obama in here is because it's the only point of reference that I know the number. When he came into office, we owed about $7 trillion on the national debt. By the time Biden is out of the office, it's going to be over $30 trillion. So 4 times the national debt. It used to be thought that that was inflationary. It's been proven over time that it's deflationary. So we're going to see continued deflation. On top of that, we have an aging population. So less people working, less productivity, lower GDP, lower inflation. So yeah, is it going to be in 2 years? Probably not, but 5, 7, 10 years, we're going to see very low interest rates. I saw something from an expert, the guy who generally was one of the people behind bringing exchange-traded funds to market, and his comment was, to believe that the stock market is fairly valued right now, you have to think we're going to have ultra-low rates for the next 50 years, because we don't think it's prudent to bet on that. But he did say we do think we're going to have ultra low interest rates for the next 20 years. So when you're thinking of what fair values are for real estate, you have to understand that we're going to have very low interest rates for a very long time.
And one of your best hedges against inflation is real estate. It's a fixed cost, you know, what have you. So anyway, good explanation, Josh. I think that is helpful for a lot of people. You know, Shay knows what she's talking about. She says this video needs more likes. Great info, guys. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate you being here. John. So John asked a question here. John, I'm a bit jealous. I'll be completely honest with this, and don't really want to answer the question because I am jealous. But he's been added to a trust fund that his parents have, and he's wondering if he can use the money in the account for a big down payment. Will that money be considered seasoned, Josh? And I'm jealous, not that you're buying a house, but of the trust fund. I think we were all clear, but just
think of it almost like a gift. A gift isn't seasoned, but it's sourced. We know where it's coming from. The trust is a valid and acceptable source of your down payment and closing cost. So although it's not seasoned, it's not an issue because we sourced it and it's an acceptable source of funds.
There you go. Good stuff. Zachary's asking, what is best, or which is best, putting more money down or buying points to lower payment? You know, I think putting more money down is Josh will be able to answer this, but we might, I think we'll probably have the same view. I don't know. I think put more money down, taking the interest rate at where it is likely the better option. Is probably going to give you a lower monthly payment in most cases, depending on what we're talking about with down payment, right? I mean, how much more down versus buying down a rate. But I think, you know, a lower amount financed is likely going to equal a lower rate in most cases versus financing more and having a little bit lower rate. But Josh, thoughts on that? And you can always refinance at some point in the future if rates go down, but thoughts?
So, on the back of my t-shirt that says numbers never lie, it's also going to say cash is king.
Don't buy points.
Well, both of those. Cash is king, and that leads to don't pay points. So let's look at it. We talked about this before, roughly a little less than $5 per 1,000 borrowed. So let's look at it saying, hey, I put an extra $100,000 down. What did I save? It's a little less than $500 a month. So what would I prefer to have, $100,000 in the bank or a $500 lower payment? It's your question to answer. For me, I'd much rather have $100,000 in the bank. I think I can get a better return on that money. And even if I can't, it's liquid and available to me. If something happens, I'd rather have that cushion there rather than a slightly lower monthly payment. So the second part of that question is buying points. If we're just trying to lower our payment, buying the points is a much better investment in terms of lowering the payment. It takes way less money to get to that same savings. But the reason why we say do not pay points is I don't want to pay money today for an interest rate that 1 year, 3 years, 5 years from now I'm going to get for free. Rates are on a 40-year bull market. Interest rates have gone lower for 40 years. That downtrend is still in line. Nothing has changed. So if anyone tries to tell you to pay points and fees for your loan, it's just not the best way to go. So all that being said, if the only way to qualify for the home that you want or need is to put the additional $100,000 down or pay a couple of points to get a 0.5% lower rate, it can be a rational decision. Just go back to get a side-by-side comparison, have someone quantify it for you. Every time I run the numbers and show them to a client, they make their own decision that they're very comfortable with. If someone just tells you, do this, do that, you don't know what's right for you. I don't know what's right for you, but I know how to analyze the numbers and help you determine what's right for you.
All right. So
let me throw one up here.
Aaron's saying your video is super sharp. Well, Aaron, I told Josh to take that garbage that he had before. He couldn't show up on a live stream with that. 265
Jeff tried
people
to
watching.
show me up with his fancy camera.
I said, get that out of here, man. We can't do this. So he got a new camera.
So Aaron,
that's where we are.
The sidebar on that is if there's something that I am absolutely is kryptonite to me is I'm good with technology. This camera up here is very confusing. So Jeb is slightly better. So he comes in my office and farts around with everything. So we're working on it. We're getting better, and we almost have me looking decent here.
No, that's and Aaron, thanks for the support. You always comment. You're always there. I appreciate it. Thanks for being there. One other thing I want to, I had this one here. Jay Finest, local lender. He basically, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically says, not a local lender. He had a local lender charge him. Make sure you're shopping around. He's telling you to shop around when you're getting a loan. It's smart to do. Josh is here. He's pitching himself, but Josh will tell you, even as a loan officer, you should shop around. And if he can't convey to you that he's the best choice in that conversation, then, you should probably use somebody else anyway. So
1,000%. Like I say, if we walk away from the conversation, you think there's someone out there that's a better option, that person's got to be pretty awesome. I want to do my loan with them.
Too funny. What'd you want to push? I thought you
throw this one up here. William had,
he said something to Tim. So let's
talking to Tim. William had too many questions up here. Let me get back to it. Okay. He bought a home for $400,000 last year with 5% down. We believe we're close to our 20% equity. Is there a semi-accurate way to get the value of your home without getting an official appraisal? There absolutely are. We have a couple of different algorithms. We have official automated valuation models that you can plug those numbers in. You can get with a real estate professional like Jeb in your area that knows the market and have them run a comparable market analysis and tell you where you think you're at. It's not a guarantee. Dave was just in here a minute ago. As an appraiser, they have guidelines they have to follow that maybe your realtor isn't aware of, or that AVM isn't picking up accurately. So it's not a guarantee, but it should give us a pretty good idea of whether it's possible. Another thing that I would point out is if you have good credit, you had that appraisal done a year ago, we are getting some wiggle room on the automated valuation. So we can run it through and see if we get an appraisal waiver through the system. A lender, I say a lender can run the automated approval. We can run it through Fannie Mae. We can run it through Freddie Mac and see if you get an appraisal waiver. And we're getting those 60% of the time. So if the value is just not there, it's just not there. But I can tell you, we've not gotten waivers on ones I was quite confident we were going to, and we've gotten waivers on ones where I said there's no world in which this thing appraises for that value. So it's definitely worth trying and checking it out.
All right. So a question here, we kind of addressed this. Well, I'll get to this one real quick. This one's easy. Is it okay to get 2 pre-approval letters? Icebreakers asking. Yes, absolutely. Nothing wrong with it. But I would encourage you to pick your lender, prior to actually getting that offer accepted if possible. Maybe if your offer gets accepted, you do one last little analysis the next day or the day of, and then make a decision. Don't drag it out, because by dragging it out, you're not only hurting yourself, but you're hurting the ability for lenders to be able to actually do their job and close in a timely manner. And, when things go wrong, everybody either looks to the lender or they look to the real estate agent for, because of those issues. And the borrower is never the one that is frowned upon. It's everyone else. And our job is to stay on track. And so you can help them by doing that upfront. So, but nothing wrong with getting more than one upfront.
And I think really the question there, getting two pre-approvalers, getting pre-approved with more than one lender,
right.
By all means, talk to at least two.
Well, I'm going to throw this one up here too. So this will go right along with it.
Okay.
So any benefit to working directly with a credit union as a lender? So we can talk about getting quotes, and you can talk about getting one from a credit union for that matter, and comparing them.
Almost every person that I talked to that had a horrible experience or got completely screwed talked to only one lender. Talk to at least two so you have a point of reference. If they seem similar and you don't love the answers you're getting, talk to a third, but talk to at least two so you have a point of comparison. A credit union is a good option. I've never seen someone get a terrible deal from a credit union. It's also pretty rare that they get a great deal. I say pretty rare because I have seen a couple of credit unions and I'm like, I don't know how they're doing it. That's a spectacular deal. So by all means, the only way to find that out is by asking them. But talk to a credit union, talk to a broker, talk to a direct lender. For the most part, unless you're getting jumbo financing, I don't see a point in talking to a bank. But some of that is California bias. We don't have a lot of local banks, which could do some things a little bit differently. I know in other parts of the country, local community banks are more common. For the most part, what I have seen in parts of the country that have community banks, we have better terms available, but you can have a relationship. I was in Tampa a couple of weeks ago, and the lady I was sitting at the table with said she's from Wyoming. And if she calls her bank, they'll put up to $75,000 into her account and then send her the loan documents later to sign and agree to it. So that's pretty nice. My bank won't do that for me. So understand that in smaller communities, there's different relationships, but talk to a broker, talk to a credit union, talk to a direct lender, see who you're comfortable with, see who has the best terms. And as always, I don't say lowest is best. I say competitive with the best expertise is best for you.
There you go. Work with an expert. Yankee Doodle has a question here. He's asking me, what will I do if the real estate market tanks? I will sell just as much property as I sell right now. Here's the thing. Successful real estate agents, professionals in the business, will be successful regardless of the market. They'll find ways to work it. There will always be people buying and selling in any environment. No different than when, the last housing crisis, I sold REOs for 3-4 years. And that's really what I did. I mean, that was bulk of my business were foreclosed properties. And so if the market tanked, I would sell more of those. I would do short sales. I would do the exact same thing I'm doing right now. It's no different. I mean, it's, people think that we love this market because, there's buyers and sellers and everything's going crazy. There's buyers and sellers in every market. You just have to be able to get in front of them. Fortunately, my business is mostly relational. I have people that trust me, advocates of my business, friends, family, past clients that refer me and continue to refer me because I do a good job, and I'm not bragging. That's just how I built my business. And that will help me in that environment too. So, I don't care what the market does, quite frankly. I want it to do well for my clients' sake, but for me, it doesn't really affect me. I don't think I'm selling anytime soon. I mean, if it goes down, I buy property. I don't know. Maybe I'll just do YouTube. I don't know. I'll just talk about it. I'll talk about the housing crash every day. Every day on a video, I'll just talk about the housing crash, just like everybody's doing right now.
One of the things I like to point out, Jeb, after the last crash, I was a little burnt out. We went into flipping houses. By the end of 2008, we were able to buy successfully, and I enjoyed that. It was nice to get a breather and not be in the office every day staring at a computer. Sometimes I still wish for that. But what I can say is my friends that stayed in the business and kept their nose to the grindstone, yeah, they did less business during that time, but the success they've had in the last 10 years was set up by the fact that 80% of their competition went away. They picked up more realtor relationships with successful professional realtors that were also fighting through that difficult market. And the majority of their success can be attributed to sticking to it, going through that downturn. The other piece of it is, if you do 200 transactions a year and you spend 220 transactions worth of income, you're going to be in trouble. If you do 200
Absolutely.
transactions and you spend 50 transactions worth of income, you don't need to have that same level going. So it really, you don't need to be driving around a Bentley and buying third and fourth homes and investing in houses all across America. Live within your means, and when things are really good, it's a bonus. You don't depend on it and have to have it happen.
Well said. Good stuff. Sing and Listen has a question here. Doesn't work. A husband has income. Both have good credit scores, good credit scores. Should she be on the loan or not? I'm assuming she, maybe him. Be on the loan or not?
So I have an answer to this. I don't think anyone should be on the loan that doesn't need to be. And the reason for that is, let's say Jeb and I go and we're buying a house together in partnership. If we both go on the loan, if something goes sideways, we've both damaged our credit. If only one of us needs to be on the loan, we can both be on title. We can be owners together, but only one person's credit is on the line. Now, we got to be pretty good friends to agree whose credit is going on the line. It's more common that it's a spouse, and we just make a decision of whoever can qualify ends up on there. So you would still be on title. You would still be an owner, but not on the loan. Now, that being said, when I go through that with all of my clients, about 8 out of 10 will go, it makes a lot of sense. We're only putting one of us on the loan. About 2 out of 10 will go, I don't like that. I'm not comfortable with it. And again, there's no right answer. It's what's right to you. My reasoning for it is just covering yourself in case something went sideways. One of you would still have clean credit and not have a foreclosure or short sale on your record.
All right. All right. Let's get to another one here. So if you're still watching, you're new, you haven't heard me say this, and even if you have and you haven't, do me a favor, hit the like button. It is appreciated. I hate asking for it. I really do, but it helps out.
Don't
It
make
really
him
does.
ask.
I know. Do not make me ask. There's 254 people watching. There should be 254 likes, and there's not. There's only like 110. What is going on here? This is a good question. Eccentric is asking, what are your thoughts on 9 of the 12 weeks decline in mortgage applications? Anything to consider there, Josh? Is it refinances dropping off? Is it like what are we looking at here?
Purchases are up year over year. Purchase applications are up year over year. People are more confident now. We know the market is hot. It's all refinance activity. So if you look, we refinanced 70% of the people that should have refinanced already. So now when rates are up, 0.3% from the lows, not to be unexpected. I mean, we still have plenty of clients. We're opening 2-3 refinances a week. And, a year ago, that was 2 or 3 a day. So is it slower? Absolutely. Is it slow? No, it's still really good.
All right. Getting a lot of love from Eccentric down here on the bottom. I'm not going to post all of it because I don't want to build your ego anymore. You can just read them in the comments there.
I'm going to post them around my office. Let me throw this one up here because this is actually, William had this same question. So we've got 2 here. So William Zhang that we answered before. Raymond Torres says, is it worth it to refi for the same interest rate just to remove the PMI? I'm actually talking to a client that purchased in 2019 that as soon as we get off this call. And for her, we're right there. We have just the 20%, just like William was asking. We've run the numbers, so no guarantee, but we think we're going to be at 80% loan to value. We're going to lower the interest rate, I think, 1/8 or 1/4%, and it's about $400 savings in the monthly payment. So again, numbers never lie. So pencil them out, look at them side by side. Now, let's say that if the rate was the same, they have a 3% rate now, and it's a new 3% rate, and all we're accomplishing is getting rid of the mortgage insurance, it may be possible to get rid of the mortgage insurance by petitioning your lender. So in William's case, he's only had the home for a year, so you need to have it for 24 months before you can ask the lender to get rid of it. So if you're within that 24 months and we can get rid of it by doing the loan versus waiting till we can order an appraisal and show them that the equity is there, it can make sense. But again, Raymond, that answer is numbers never lie. Let's run the numbers. Let's throw in your current situation. Let's show what's available and see if it makes sense for you.
All right. When I said ask people to hit the like button a minute ago, we went from 110 to 138 in like a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
So it actually works. when you ask people to do that.
I
So
thought you were going to say, you said that we went from 250 viewers to 138. And you're like, you got rid of half of them?
We're still sitting at 250, man. So here's a question that people often ask: at what point does a lender give me a pre-approval letter? I've been given a rough loan estimate. Do I have to ask for the approval letter? So what will happen is oftentimes if you do a basic pre-qual, you don't provide any documentation, you might not get an approval letter at all, right? That's a pre-qualification. But if you have that conversation with a lender like Josh, you provide the necessary documentation that goes along with that conversation, tax returns, pay stubs, W-2s, whatever it is that you're having that conversation about. And he comes back and says, or she comes back and says, hey, you're approved for this amount. They may not give you an official pre-approval letter. Oftentimes they don't, because what's the buyer going to do with just a pre-approval letter? They might send you one in email or what have you. It's more important for us as realtors that we have it. And typically we like to tailor them to offers in some cases. Just, in the past, I will tell you, when we're making offers on property, if we were making an offer at 800,000, we wanted to show the pre-approval letter at 800,000. I don't think that's important these days just because of where prices have gone. In fact, I'm going the other way. If somebody's
the highest one possible.
Yeah. If somebody's approved for 900,000 and they're making an offer for 800,000, I'm showing the $900,000 pre-approval letter, DU findings, the automated findings, all of that to say, hey, look, my client's making an offer on this property, but they're qualified to purchase way more property. And so in that case, one pre-approval letter at a higher amount may be fine. But if somebody's not giving you one, it's not, the end of the world. There's nothing necessarily wrong, but I would ask the question. And if you want one, I'm sure they'll have no problem sending you one. And then what's going to happen is you're likely just going to pass that along to your real estate agent. And, they will work hand in hand with your lender in most cases to, with whatever's necessary to get offers accepted and what needs to be submitted. So, each one's going to be a little bit different. I know some bigger banks send them to you immediately, but a lot of times they're not doing, a lot of them are pre-qual letters and not true pre-approval letters. So just make sure whatever you're getting is pre-approval.
So what I would say, people oftentimes, Jeb, their big concern is, when do I get my pre-approval letter? When do I get my pre-approval letter? And say the most important thing we can do is connect me with your real estate professional. Half the time they come from the real estate professional, the other half the time they find us, and say, let's get on the same page. And I'll send one to both of you that's a generic number so that you guys both know that you're approved. Crazy thing in the COVID market, a lot of times you need the pre-approval letter just to get in to see a property. They won't even let you in without it. So that's more important now than ever. So I totally get it. We'll usually send one out right away. But much like Jeb was saying, I would rather have one customized to the offer. If you want one for 900 and you're writing offers at 750, I'm more than happy to do that. It's a pain in the butt for us to keep going back and redoing. But I want to know when you're sending out those offers so that we can follow up with the agent. I want to get them tailored and make them look as good as possible. So there's more to it than just a little piece of paper. If you wanted to make a big mistake, you can go to Quicken and they'll give you a little piece of paper and they won't talk to the realtor that calls and asks. They won't do a cross-qual if the listing agent requires it. It really is. It's relationship based and it's more than just a piece of paper. The piece of paper is important. You want to know that you are approved and have written proof of that. But there's more to it than that. And that relationship between yourself, your lender, your realtor, and reaching out to the other side when making the offer is the important part.
All right. Another good question by Sing and Listen here is asking, what do you think of multiple home inspections on an 80s built home? The area I was looking at has only old homes, but in a great school district. So I'm going to just eliminate the second and third part of that and just say, do I think you should have multiple home inspections? I say no. Work with a good home inspector to start, someone that is referred to you, maybe somebody that if you have someone that you trust or what have you. If you find one good one, detailed, they know how to do their job, you don't need multiple because they're going to do what is necessary up front. Now, you may get multiple types of inspections. You may get a home inspection, and then you may get a mold inspection, and then you may get a sewer inspection or a separate roof inspection, that sort of thing. In some cases, that's necessary. But I think somebody going through the home, and checking, the furnace and checking the water heater and checking the electrical and the plumbing, all that. I don't think you need more than one person to do that unless the first person wasn't qualified to start. And I would say that even if you're buying a house and they've already done an inspection, and they're giving you the inspection to say, hey, look, this buyer was an escrow, or we did an inspection prior to, the sell of the house, or prior to listing it, and here's the inspection. I would still encourage you as a buyer to get your own, with somebody trust, like whatever, because you want to make sure that they, all the bases were covered. Now, I think if you're the one picking the inspector, you don't need to get multiple, but I think you do need one separate from one that other people have gotten, because the last thing you'd want is something missed, because somebody cut corners, or they were working on behalf of somebody and voluntarily missed something. Not that happens, but I'm assuming it could. But that's a long way of getting around to the question of, no, I don't think you need multiple. All right, getting late in here. 6:49. Let's take a couple more. Josh, Haley Kim did it. She gave us a thumbs up, so thank you, Haley.
Let me throw one up here, because I'm also going to throw back Eccentric's post, and it's not the one saying nice things about me. It's just it's a different one that I like. So Jay Finest, why doesn't the government or state raise rates or taxes on second property ownership so first-time home buyers can have an opportunity to buy peacefully? For the most part, the types of homes that are being purchased for second homes are not entry-level homes that first-time buyers are buying. They're in resort areas, they're in beach areas, higher-priced areas. So there's not a lot of overlap. Instead of penalizing certain people, what we really should be doing, one of the things that was proposed at one of the
Tim, I'll get to your question in a sec. Sorry, go ahead.
One of the things that we were talking about at this event last week is, instead of a $15,000 incentive for buyers to buy, which just makes it harder for you guys to get offers accepted, what if we gave a $15,000 incentive to builders to build when they met certain thresholds, so that we have more homes available? There's ways to use the carrot and the stick from the government, and penalizing people for buying a vacation home or a second home generally wouldn't accomplish the goal of getting more of you guys into your first home. And where I wanted to go with that, Jeb, was Eccentric followed up and answered Jay, says that's going to happen soon as California turns into a communist state. And that is damn near as accurate as it can get.
So Tim had a question. I'm not sure what Tim's question was exactly. Tim, drop it again, man. Sorry. Just put because you got a couple going here. Like, tell me what it is. In the meantime, I'm going to address Luxury Card Store, because it's $5, and that is worth acknowledging. So thank you for that. The contribution, it is much appreciated. If I buy a property already occupied by a renter, am I required to let them stay if the lease is not up yet due to the moratorium? You would be required to let them stay even if the moratorium was up, if they have a lease agreement. So if somebody has a lease agreement on a property and you purchase that property, in theory, they've leased that property regardless of who owns it, unless you've worked something out prior to the purchase of that house with them leaving. The fact that the moratorium's in place adds a whole different element there. And yes, I mean, it's on you to deal with that. No different than buying a foreclosed property from an auction and it having tenants in it, or having someone live in the property. Once you own that property, that's your responsibility. It's up to you to get them out of the property, to file whatever is necessary to go through that eviction process or what have you. So you got to be careful in this market where, there are moratoriums in place and there are tenants in property. And even if you're buying investment property or leasing property, if you have investments and you're leasing to people, these are things that, you never had to worry about before. If somebody got in a property and they didn't pay, you kicked them out. That's not the way it works at the moment. It will likely get dragged out a little bit further, is my guess. And that's merely a guess. Josh thinks it's going through, I think he said 2022 at one point. I'm holding him to that. So with the moratorium. All right.
At least until the midterms, my friend, at least until the midterms.
All right. So we'll go ask in different messages, Jennifer. All right, here we go. What do we got? What's Tim's question? Let's get this question. You see a question from Tim? I see a couple, but not pertaining to real estate per se.
Yeah, I don't. I just saw the one which.
I mean, he's asking one about investing in. Let's see here. Let's go. I'm close to it. I know I am because I saw it.
The first one says, can you ask if ASPS is a good investment? Debt collecting. It's a company that's into debt collecting. So,
yeah, I mean, debt service. I mean, I don't have an answer for you. I'm not familiar with the company. I typically, like to invest in well-known companies that, are in industries that are doing well. That's where my bread and butter is. I like to know what the company's doing exactly and all of that good stuff. Your Apples of the world, your Facebooks of the world, your Disneys of the world. That's where I like to put my money, just because I know what they're doing. And I my kids are watching Disney every day. So I imagine every other kid is doing the same thing with, being, in this quarantine or whatever it is we're going through at the moment, where they can't go to school and they're at home and everybody has an Apple phone. So that's what I'm looking at when I'm trying to invest in company. I think if you're thinking about the other, maybe from the side that there's going to be, foreclosures and that sort of thing, and you're trying to get on the side of that, I think you might be early in the game, but it, which could work out, but I don't know enough about it to give you any advice. Sorry.
It's down about 40% year to date, so the market doesn't love it. So maybe he's asking, I'm thinking that it's at a discount. It's near the lows of the last 5 years. It bounced around.
So they're mainly in eviction assistance and foreclosure assistance. Tim, unfortunately, man, I wouldn't be a good, I wouldn't want to give you bad advice. I don't know enough about them to really tell you one way or the other. I mean, I think if companies out there that deal with, that sort, if they deal with the eviction process and the foreclosure process and that sort of thing in the long run, yeah, those companies could do well. But at this point, we don't know what's going to happen. I've had a couple of people, 3 people, in fact, reach out to me in the last, let's say 10 days that are on forbearance. And they're asking me, should I extend my forbearance? I don't need it. My job is fine. I just got it precautionary, just in case something happened. I took it just, but I've been able to pay off debt. I've been able to put myself in a good position. Should I extend it? And I said, well, I mean, it depends on like what your situation. It's hard for me to give you advice without really knowing. But that's just 3 people that contacted me that didn't really need it. So how many people out there that are taking this sort of assistance and that sort of thing, actually are going to be fine coming out of this process? It's really hard to say. And I think there's the numbers, again, it's merely a guess, aren't going to be as bad as some people think they're going to be. So if that's the case, then maybe a stock like that doesn't do as well. But anyway, we are pushing 7:00 here. That is, I think, where we're going to end it, man. I would ask, if you haven't done so, hit the subscribe button, join the channel. Here every Wednesday night, answering your housing questions, real estate, lending, mortgage, whatever it is, stocks. I mean, we're stocks now, Josh, to help guide you through the process. So
housing related stocks.
Yeah. So we appreciate you being here. I appreciate the support. I really do appreciate the support. Not just saying that. You guys are awesome. A lot of you show up weekly. A lot of you comment on my videos and encourage me and help me create new topics and stay on top of my game. And I appreciate that. Josh, final parting words here. I'm going to throw some email addresses up while we do it. So if you want to contact or reach out.
I'm gonna answer one last question because
someone
hit one of my hot buttons again. Sing and Listen said, "Why is Quicken Loans bad?" They're not bad. They're the McDonald's of the mortgage business. You will get a perfectly average loan from a perfectly new kid in a call center that doesn't know much. And if your loan is easy enough, they'll get it done, and you'll get middle of the road terms that you could have got better somewhere else. Find an expert and work with them. We don't need McMortgages would be the easiest answer, to put it in a quick metaphor. But with that, just follow up, say again, thanks all of you guys for watching. Hopefully we're getting you guys the answers to your questions, and keep coming with the good questions. And as long as Jeb will have me, I'll keep torturing you guys with my answers.
There you go. And I saw one more question I'm just going to address here we're going to just keep addressing questions till we
Just keep
stay on.
going. We're not going
If
home.
the housing crash were to take place, would 2021 be your year to pick, or 2026? It's not going to be 2021. I do know that. I don't know if it's as far out as 2026, and I don't know that I necessarily expect a crash. I do think things will adjust. I think we're a couple years out from that. So I would say maybe 2024-ish could be more realistic, but I could see it. I could see this thing carrying on for some time, depending on who's in office and how much contribution and all that is thrown that way. So that is where I'll end it. Appreciate you guys once again. Tell your friends, family, whoever to join us if they're thinking about buying a house. If they want inside info, we are here. We will see you next week. Have a great day. Bye-bye.